Welcome to Undercomplicating Stuff, where we, two psychologists and coaches with over a combined 40 years of experience, share our insights to help undercomplicate important topics. A friendly reminder that this video is meant for conversational and entertainment purposes only. Please see the information section below this video for additional resources. So, Dr. Gideon, do you want to do an introduction?
Thanks, Julie. Yes, I'm Stacey Gideon. I'm a health psychologist and the founder of a healthcare consulting and professional coaching business. And for you, Dr. Radico?
I am Julie Radico. I'm a psychologist, a coach, an author, and a speaker. And so this topic today bridges from a previous video that we had in which a question we got was related to what you might notice in a loved one that would make you think they could benefit from therapy. And this is sort of like the part two of that with a different question of how to then talk to a loved one who you think could benefit from therapy. So I'm just going to lean back and let Dr. Gideon tell us how do you solve this problem of talking to a loved one who you're like, oh, you could benefit from therapy.
Well,
And go.
yes, as you know, Julie, we have the perfect script. As trained therapists with decades of experience and coaching, we do not.
Mm,
Even we do not get the benefit of having the exact perfect wording, perfect timing, perfect conversation with the people in our lives who we think might benefit from therapy. And that should not stop us, though, from really approaching the subject and seeing where someone might be with what we're noticing and what our concerns are. And
mm,
it can be tricky and uncomfortable. And there are some guidelines. For example, if you're in the middle of an argument, not the time. Bring
mm,
up that you think that person might benefit from therapy. That may
mm.
not be taken very well. In the middle of a crisis, these are things that you really want to be mindful when you are going to approach the person. And there are other little strategies that we do use and recommend to people. And I'm wondering, Julie, if you could add on to some of those.
If the people watching this video forget every single thing that we're going to say, other than you will never have the perfect words when trying to talk to anyone about going to therapy, like that's what I want y'all to stick with. And that's not in a uh, sad, defeated sort of way. It's in a let yourself off the hook. Like, think about how you want to approach this conversation with the good intentions that you have. Therapy is not a threat. It's not a punishment. It's not an ultimatum. It's not a consequence of something. Therapy is, and what you want to express is a way for somebody that you love to get help that you think they could really benefit from. Another consideration to think about to join with you, Stacy, is meeting that person where they're at.
Mm.
So if you are talking to somebody about going to therapy, you first got to like check in and see if they even want to have this conversation. So, sometimes we think, okay, this person, I got to talk to them about getting help. They need help. I know this to be true. They're in the yellow, orange, or red zone. Like, we got to help this person. And they might not be ready to hear that. They might not have their listening ears on in general, but they also might be hearing, even if you're doing your best, they might be hearing shame or guilt or blame, and they might not be ready to have that conversation. What do you suggest people do if they start to get that feeling of like, oh, this is not going well, or I didn't say the perfect thing because you never will, but like this is going south. Like
Yeah.
I don't think this person's ready to hear this. Like what might you encourage people to do?
At that time, it may be good just to take a break,
Mm,
revisit it later. We tend to dig our heels in when
mm,
someone's trying to tell us what to do. And you might also look at other things that you could say or do, or timing, or other factors that might make the person more receptive to discussing it.
mm,
The other thing is, let's say you have someone who's in the maybe the yellow zone and they do recognize or acknowledge some changes, some issues, uh, and yet are still struggling with the idea of going to therapy. It's not that bad. I know someone, let's take drinking. Well, I'm not living under a bridge, or I'm able to still go to work
Mm,
most days and things like that,
mm,
yeah, they kind of acknowledge things have changed and there may be some downside to that, but they aren't quite there.
mm,
One thing that can always be a good question is, well, what would need to happen for you to say now's the time?
mm,
What's that tipping point or what's that indicator to say, ooh, yeah, I think this could be a problem that could benefit from therapy? And I think that can be a helpful question if someone's receptive. If they're not receptive at all, you're better at dropping it. We talk about in motivational interview, dropping the rope, not continuing to have this struggle with someone because it won't go anywhere.
Yeah, you definitely don't want to be like holding that tug of war sort of rope with that person and going back and forth. Another way to think about that is a similar, motivational interviewing jargon in a way, but rolling with the resistance.
Mm,
If you're, if somebody is closing the door on that conversation, you want to figure out, okay, knowing that we're not walking through that door right now, we're not getting to that point, but how do we leave this door open?
mm,
Can you ask them for permission to do so? Can you say, Stacy, I was thinking this might be a good time for us to have this conversation, and I'm picking up that I made a bad call here. Would it be okay if we talk about this in the future? Like
mhm.
leaving the door open a bit. And sometimes if you're like, oh, I think that person, that loved one is going to say no, they're going to be like, nope, Julie, door's closed. Then maybe not necessarily asking for permission, but just stating in a very neutral, non-judgmental way, like, okay, Stacey, I hear that this, I picked a bad time to have this conversation. I'm going to check in with you in a
Yeah.
couple weeks just to see how things are going. Not so they're not saying yes or no. You're just telling them that's what you're going to do. You're going to hold yourself accountable. But otherwise, you're rolling with that resistance.
Mhm.
You you're not going to convince somebody to get help if they are invested in not getting help because they might be really invested in or benefiting from or feeling like the only thing that's helping them is that like maladaptive behavior, that
Mhm.
thing that you're like, oh, that they're drinking alcohol is hurting them. I want them to stop because I want them to be healthy. I love them. I care about them. That makes a lot of sense, right? That is not the same lens that that person is
Right.
viewing their what they're doing in. They're saying like, I'm struggling with maybe this emotion, this situation that happened, this trauma, this you name it. And alcohol is a way that I cope with that. And if I take that alcohol away, I'm going to fall apart. So I am invested in staying with my drinking. And now my loved one who says they care about me is coming and trying to take away the
Mhm.
one thing that is like helping me cope. That's scary.
Yeah. Yeah, very scary. And what can happen, I guess a couple of different things can happen. One is then they double down.
Mm,
They really are not going to be open or receptive to change. The other is if there's a way to weave in some questions, again, to understand their motivation. So if the motivation for, we'll just take the example of drinking, is to manage stress in some way. If it's an option to explore, well, if there were other ways that you could manage stress outside of this, do you think you'd be open to learning about those? And sort of offering up that there can be some other strategies so they aren't left with nothing. And oftentimes you have to meet in the middle where it's okay, well, while you're still doing that, would you also be open to learning some new things and offering support? The the thread to keep in mind, though, offering support is wonderful, but you can't be their therapist.
mm,
And that's not your role. That's not our role in our loved ones' lives. And there's funny memes going around, swag that will say, I'm a therapist, but I'm not your therapist.
mm.
And it's true. And so
Mm.
being mindful, the person may say, well, I have you to talk to. You're the only one I need. And you're thinking, oh my gosh, I'm feeling overwhelmed and I'm drowning with the weight of all of this. I can't hold this. And being mindful of, okay, where are my boundaries in terms of taking care of myself?
Mhm.
and maybe even sharing that with your loved one.
To add to that, I think about holding stuff. So what I think about to add to what you just said is holding someone's stuff. So when you are talking to a loved one about, I think that you could benefit from therapy, like that's the idea of our topic, right? You're saying, I'm holding your stuff right now to like, I'm putting it front and center in my mind and I'm trying to support the other person on this. That other person might say, "Oh, okay, you're here to support me. Great. Hold all my stuff. Hold it all. Like here, like I can't go to therapy because of this thing, or I can't go because of that, or I'm invested in my unhelpful behavior because of this or that." And then you're like, "Oh, well now I'm holding all this stress that part of this is sure, I asked to do this. Like I care about you. I'm happy to do this for a time." To your point, Stacey, there's an important really important decision, thoughtful, like approach to saying, okay, I'm holding this stuff and it's not all my stuff. And I got to be able to put it down at some point. Not throw it on the floor, not like ignore it and like, but I can't hold all this all the time. I need to take care of myself so I can be there to hold some of your stuff when you need me to. And that's a lot of what happens in therapy and coaching is like good therapists will help you. They like come under your hands and they help you hold your stuff for that time. And it takes a lot of thoughtful practice for that therapist to help you say, okay, well, where are you going to put this stuff for now? Or how do you want to address it? Do you want to put this here, this here? But also that therapist, if every single psychologist, coach, therapist held all the stuff that clients ask them to hold all the time, we would never be able to help anybody. So it's an important, really
Yeah.
smart, healthy thing to do for yourself. It's not selfish. It's not, oh, well, I said I wanted to help and I'm not.
Right.
Mm-mm-mm. You need to be able to put this stuff down at some point.
Right, right. And adding to that, which is huge, even some basic foundational strategies of using I statements, instead of,
Mhm.
you make me anxious when you're drinking, I feel anxious and those sort of communication skills that are really basic where you're talking about yourself,
Yeah.
not in a selfish way, but in a way that you're not blaming someone.
Mhm.
And it could be thinking about how would you want someone to bring up a concern to you? And maybe it's something along the lines of, I'm here to support you. I'm concerned about you. I would like to suggest that you think about therapy and when or if you're ready, hopefully it's when, I'll be here to help you with that process in whatever way you need.
Yeah, yeah, beautiful points. Try not to put that person in that corner. Again, you want to leave the door open, even if because it's very likely that you're going to have this conversation multiple times, and you want to do it in such a way that it feels non-blamey, non-shamey, not like you, or again, as we talked about in the beginning, therapy is not like a consequence or a punishment for something. It's a, hey, we have this really great, helpful tool out there and let's see if we can find a good type of therapy that fits for you that's really going to be helpful. So, as we start to wrap up, my key takeaways echo what we've been talking about that like we need to meet people where they're at. We can't make people do something that they're not ready or willing to do. So, let them know that you're there to support them again, while being mindful that it can't be just you holding all the stuff and you've got to take care of yourself too and being able to put that down. And then if I could put it on a billboard, you will never say all the right things. Let yourself off the hook. This is a really important topic that we're talking about and just know that the best you can do is just your best effort. It's never gonna be perfect. So don't hold yourself to that sort of standard of doubting yourself. Like having a good, kind conversation worth its weight in gold.
Mhm.
Try to keep that door open, try to make it non-judgmental, but you're gonna mess up. You're gonna say things that are not the right words because we do it. And
Yeah,
we've been doing this for a really long
yeah,
time.
yeah. And thankfully, most people are forgiving.
Mm,
when we do that. And the only thing to add, and it's really a reframing what you've already said, is you wanting to focus on listening and supporting, not convincing or dragging or pushing
yeah.
into therapy. Those of us who serve as therapists or coaches, whenever someone's forced into that, it does not usually go well. It's problematic from the start, and so that won't be helpful either.
If this topic resonated with you, please share it with someone that you care about. Also, please comment, like, subscribe. You can message us on YouTube or LinkedIn with suggestions for questions that you'd like us to discuss in future episodes.